Okay, welcome everyone. One moment as I remember how I'm going to welcome you today. Hi, I'm Katie Freeman, and on behalf of the Mystery Writers of America, welcome to the 77th Annual Edgar Award Symposium. Today's discussion is with the nominees for the Lilian Jackson Braun Memorial Award. Our moderator is Michael Ford, and our bookseller is The Cloak and Dagger in Princeton, New Jersey. You can learn more about the Edgar Awards by following us on social media using the hashtag Edgars2023, or by visiting the websites mysterywriters.org and edgarawards.com. And I'll be sharing those in the chat as well. The Edgar Awards will be live streamed on our YouTube channel, which this is also being live streamed today on YouTube on April 27th. That's this coming Thursday. During the discussion, I will be posting links to our panelists' books in the chat. Please feel very welcome to submit questions in the Q&A box throughout the conversation, and we'll get to them towards the end of the hour. And now I'm going to introduce our moderator. Our moderator today is Michael Thompson Ford, who is the author of numerous books for young readers and adults, including What We Remember, which won the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Men's Mystery. He has also been a finalist for the Shirley Jackson Award, the Bram Stoker Award, the Ignite Award, and the Firecracker Alternative Book Award. His most recent book for teen readers is Every Star That Falls, and his first thriller for adults, The Best Man, is forthcoming from Kensington. So thank you very much for being here, everyone, and take it away, Michael.
Hello, everyone in Internet land. Thank you for coming to this. This is very exciting because this is the first year that MWA is sponsoring the Lilian Jackson Braun Memorial Award, and we always like to be the first. And so congratulations to the first five finalists for the award. So for those of you who don't know, the Braun Award was endowed by Lilian Jackson Braun, and it was a great surprise. We did not know this was happening. It was in her will. And she wanted to endow an award for cozy mysteries because there weren't any in the Edgar Awards. And this is not technically an Edgar Award. It's sponsored by MWA, but it's a special award. And she left us an endowment to keep doing this every year. So we are very, very excited. And so first of all, congratulations to all five of you for being our first finalists. I can't tell you how exciting it was to be the jury chair for this. Also nerve-wracking. You know, you get well over 100 books to read and you sort of wonder what's going to happen with this kind of a thing. And it was a pleasure and a delight to do this. So first of all, thank you to the Braun Foundation for sponsoring this. Thank you to MWA for administering it. Thank you to our jurors for reading all of these books and having lively discussions about them. And yeah, so we're going to get going. We have an hour and a lot of stuff to get through. So let us go through all of you and introduce you to people who may not be familiar with you and your work. And I'm going to read the lovely bios that we have here, so bear with me. And we're going to go in alphabetical order because that's what we do in life, I guess. So Connie Berry. Connie waved to everybody. There's Connie. Connie Berry writes the USA Today best-selling Kate Hamilton mystery series set in the UK and featuring an American antiques dealer with a gift for solving crimes. Like her protagonist, Connie was raised by antiques who instilled in her a passion for history, fine art, and foreign travel. During college, she studied at St. Clair's in Oxford, England, where she fell under the spell of the British Isles. Her debut novel, A Dream of Death, won the Ippy Gold for mystery and was a finalist for the Agatha Award. Connie is a member of SYNC, MWA, and CWA. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms in this panel. I'm just telling you now. She's on the board of her local writers group and on the steering committee for Guppies. She lives in Ohio and northern Wisconsin with her husband and adorable dog, Emmy, who is not joining us today, I'm assuming. Either the husband or the adorable dog, because I do not see them. Tamara Berry is the author, Tamara Wave, right, there you are, is the author of the By the Book Cozy Mystery series and under the pen name Lucy Gilmore, several contemporary romance and women's fiction novels. Also a freelance writer and editor, she has a bachelor's degree in English literature and a serious penchant for Nancy Drew novels. She lives in Bigfoot country, AKA Eastern Washington, with her family and their menagerie of pets. Alicia, wait, there's Alicia. Bessette is the author of Smile Beach Murder, a Southern indie bestseller, an Amazon editor's pick, and one of Real Simple's best beach reads of 2022. Before authoring the Outer Banks Bookshop mystery series, Bessette worked as a reporter in her home state of Massachusetts, where her writing won a first-place award from the New England Newspaper and Press Association. A pianist and published poet, she now loves living in coastal North Carolina with her husband, novelist Matthew Quick. Michael Kraft. Hello, sir. Michael Kraft is the author of 18 novels, 4 of which were finalists for Lambda Literary Awards. His 2019 mystery, Choir Master, was a gold winner of the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award. In addition, his prize-winning short fiction has appeared in British as well as American literary journals. Kraft grew up in Illinois and spent his middle years in Wisconsin, the setting for many of his books. He now lives in Rancho Mirage, California, near Palm Springs, which provided the setting for his current Dante and Jazz mystery series. In 2017, Michael Kraft's professional papers were acquired by the Special Collections Department of the Rivera Library at the University of California, Riverside. And finally, Mr. Robert Thorogood. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Robert is an English screenwriter and novelist. He is the creator of the hit BBC One murder mystery series Death in Paradise and 4 accompanying novels. Now, we're getting to something interesting here, Robert. After graduating from Cambridge University, he spent many years supporting his writing career with a variety of temporary jobs, including dressing up in a full bear costume to taunt then Prime Minister John Major, being a magician at Hamleys, and being employed to change the batteries in the remote controls for a minor branch of the Saudi royal family.
Yeah, all of that is unbelievably true. Yes.
He's been an avid fan of murder mysteries since he read his first Agatha Christie novel, Peril at End House, at the age of 10. I assume that's true as well.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So just to circle back for a minute, in case anybody is unaware, the Braun Award is very specifically for cozy mysteries, which is one of, if not the most popular genre in our mystery writing world. And I'm going to guess that a lot of you, like Robert, were first introduced to cozies through Miss Christie's books. Is that true?
Yes.
So I think people who are watching this are interested in why you chose this genre. And I want to start this question with Michael Kraft, because it's not your first cozy, but that is not what you started off writing.
Correct.
So what interested you in this genre?
Well, the mystery writing sort of chose me. When I was trying to get my first book published, actually my second book published, and I finally had the good fortune to connect with a New York agent, Mitchell Waters, and he suggested that my goal was to become known as a literary writer. But the manuscript I had in hand had elements of mystery to it. And he said, tell you what, I think we ought to work up the mystery elements, turn it into a more conventional mystery per se. And if you do, I think I know where I can sell it. In fact, that was Kensington Books. They had not yet published a gay title. And so this gave birth to my Mark Manning mystery series. I really didn't know what I was doing. And the first couple of books in the series were sort of my experimenting with the kind of book I wanted to write. And I thought, well, to be a big bestseller, it has to have a big plot and very high stakes and so on. And it just wasn't me. And in the 3rd volume of the series, I moved the protagonist, Mark Manning, from Chicago to a small town in Wisconsin, basically because that's what I had done. And I had worked at the Chicago Tribune for 10 years, right in the newsroom, not as a writer, but as a graphic designer. So I had really absorbed that milieu very well and was able to depict it. But by the time I finally was able to start publishing novels, it was a 12-year journey. I had moved away from that and really could not depict that very well. And so I came up with a setting that I invented out of whole cloth, Dumont, Wisconsin. And at the same time, I thought it was time to change the narrative voice. So I switched to a first-person narration. And because it was set in a small town, it suddenly just took on sort of a cozy feeling. And I realized at that point that these are the books I want to write. And that's basically what I've been doing ever since. There were a few cat mysteries thrown into the mix. I know, Lilian Jackson Braun is known for that. And when I was wrapping up the Mark Manning series, my agent said, "You know what, Mike, you like cats. You ought to consider cat mysteries." And my reaction was, like, huh? I didn't know that was a thing, ignorant me. And he said, "Yeah, you should look into these." And then, that stuck in the back of my mind for a long time. And then at another juncture where I had completed one series and wasn't sure what to do next, I thought, give it a try. And that was my Mr. Puss series of mysteries, 3 books from 2018 through 2020. And then I decided, well, actually, it wasn't a quick decision to leave that, but I got an email out of the blue one morning asking if I wanted to contribute a story to an anthology titled Palm Springs Noir. And I had never written in the noir vein, so I thought, sure, let's just try it out. So that story was titled VIP Check-In. It was published, I think, 3 years ago. And I created a couple of characters I just loved, Dante O'Donnell and Jazz Friendly. I knew I had a book there. I thought I probably had a series. And Desert Getaway is the first in the series. And that's why I'm here today. I'm just delighted to be in the company of all the rest of you.
Well, it's interesting. The 5 of you all have something very distinct about your books that make you unique among the finalists. And we'll get to those as we go around. But I want to move on to Connie, because you have the distinction of being the only I've juried a lot of awards, and it is very rare for books later in a series to end up as finalists for awards. I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be pretty unusual. This is the 4th book in your
Hello, everyone. I think we may be having some technical difficulties here. Michael, I think you're coming in and out a little bit. Is that true for everyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So I think well, Michael, maybe we see how if your computer can catch up with our speeds. Connie, I feel like the question was asking about having something later in a series. So maybe that's something that you think you could talk about if I'm coming in and understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, I heard bits and pieces of it, and that's what I understood too. And I didn't know that was unusual, but I'm very glad that that's true, and that my work is being recognized after 4 books. But I want to go back to the question that you asked, Michael, and that is, what interested me in cozy mysteries. And again, I have to say, and I'm just kind of letting you know how clueless I am about most things, I guess, but I didn't know there was a thing as cozy mysteries. I just wrote, I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read. I wanted to put everything in a book that I would want to read. And I did start out with Agatha Christie, and I went on to read a lot of the Golden Agers. And I wasn't analyzing what it was that I loved about them, but whatever it was about them that I loved, I wanted to do that same thing. And so have I answered your question?
You have. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We have rural Ohio internet, so I apologize if it goes. I joked with a friend of mine that we.
Oh yeah, you're going in and out, Michael.
the moment where the tech person comes back from behind the scenes and attempts to make a question.
Oh, good.
Michael, I'll stay on for a bit as we see how maybe we can collectively ask the questions together.
So you can hear me, Katie?
I can hear you. You're sort of getting frozen for a minute. So you can also send questions to me if you do really get frozen, then I can ask them, and we'll all make this work. It'll be a mystery in as it happens. How will we get through this conversation together, which I'm deeply enjoying. So all right, let's see if you can continue on. Or not. It's a real question. So where were we at? Let's
I wonder if Michael turned his video off, would it make it the bandwidth work better if we turned his video off and we could have the audio perhaps?
It's
that could help.
I can see if I can have Michael, do you want to try to turn your video off, and I can try to have that not make you disappear from the conversation?
Let me try that. Can I do that?
Okay, let's see what happens when we do that.
Is that
This is very 2020.
Yes, very, yes. Yeah.
Is that any better?
I think so. I think we can continue to hear, and it'll be like the voice of, in the overviews, the voice of God is asking the question. So
Great and powerful Oz.
yes. All right, let's continue on that way. And thank you, everyone.
Let's see if this works. My question for Connie that I'm interested in is, does it become easier or harder to write this character as you go through a series for you?
Both, because I have gotten to know my main characters much, much better. And I think it's really fun to reveal more of them, more of their backstory that wasn't revealed in the first book or the second book. But I think you also have to make sure that they're in some way growing and changing. And so you have to have a larger character arc. And I think that is, as you go along, I mean, I only have 4 books. I have a novella coming out in October, and I'm working on my 5th book, but I'm thinking about people like Laurie R. King and people that have had just, so many books out. And I really admire how they are able to keep that going. And so that's always what I'm interested in. How do you make each book fresh? How do you bring in new things, but you keep what is good, and you continue to reveal character, kind of peeling back that onion, getting deeper and deeper into your main characters and your cast of characters.
Interesting. Well, that brings me to Tamara. I'm interested in yours because you started a new series for this book. Was that because you wanted to do something different than what you had been doing, or
Well, I mean, that's publishing. Sometimes they don't pick to continue the series that you're working on, and they want to see something shiny and new. So this was my shiny and new.
Interesting. Your book, I think, has I'm not going to say that. I was going to say it has the distinction of having the most humor, but actually there's humor in all of them, which was a delight to find. It's very interesting when you read 120 cozy mysteries back to back. You start to notice certain patterns, which is intriguing. And within a few pages, you can often figure out what this book is going to be. With your 5, that was the exact opposite. I found that really interesting, that these were the books that surprised me the most. One of not to take away from the talking about you, but we're talking about me for a moment. One of the interesting things about chairing juries is you never know how they're going to respond, and everybody runs them differently. In our jury, we did not discuss any of the books until people handed in their top 10 lists. And so as the chair, I was really curious, is there going to be any overlap? Are there going to be 50 different books that we now have to argue about? And by and large, no, there weren't. And it was really interesting to see what books separated themselves from. When you have that many books, and with any book award, you don't ever want to say anything's the best, because how can there be a best out of 100, and how can there ever be a best book of any kind, right? So with something like this, you have to say, what distinguishes these books as cozies? And I think it is very safe to say that these 5 books that ended up our 5 finalists each have something very distinctively different about them from the cozy genre. And Tamara, yours was absolutely the humor. I don't want to have any spoilers, but anything that begins with fish being exploded into the air, my husband will tell you that I was howling, and because, you know, as I'm reading them, sometimes I'll comment on them, and he said, "Oh, you must really like that one." And I said, "You'll never believe what just happened in this book," because I have seen, I live in rural Ohio. I've seen people do things with dynamite. So anyway, okay, moving on to, now we're back to about you. So Robert, I don't want to say you're primarily a screenwriter. You have 4 novels. I don't want to say how is it different for you? How is it different taking characters for screen and for a novel?
That's a good question. Actually, it is interesting how very, very different the 2 forms are. Because with a television show, so Death in Paradise is in its 12th season now. So I've been working on it. I mean, I left it actually to do, you asked us to bring our books in, here you are, here's the Marlowe Murder Club. I left it last year to write that, or the year before last to write that. And over the 10 years that I was there, I think I came up with the team, let me absolutely be clear, about 80 episodes. And the main thing is that with a TV show, it's a gang show. You've got other writers, you've got other executives, you're all batting ideas around together. But if we're talking about the differences, a TV show, Death in Paradise, is 60 minutes here in the UK. So you can only kill one person, realistically. And we learned very quickly that if you kill a second person, well, then you've still got to go and process the scene. You've got to talk to witnesses. So it just takes up too much time. And equally, you're limited by the budget, because we've only got a BBC budget and we spend most of it on flying people out to the Caribbean. And you don't see that on screen. So you can only have 4 or 5 suspects. And also you're limited by geography. You know, we film on Guadeloupe, which is a beautiful Caribbean island. But I wanted to do somebody thrown off a cliff. In fact, thinking of Evil Under the Sun, I wanted to do what would be my version of Evil Under the Sun, the amazing Agatha Christie novel. And I came up with a pitch and I went to the room and I was really excited. And they said, there are no cliffs on Guadeloupe. So that became the second Death in Paradise novel that I wrote. So there's a lot of fun and laughter and joy and discussion and back and forth when you do a TV show. And as the other 4 writers, about all of us who are writers know, when you do a book, you're on your own for 6 months. And it is very lonely. You're producing 80,000 words. And the first time you hand it over to anyone is sort of when it's finished, which is crazy, because with a TV show, it starts with a pitch, which can be just a verbal pitch, then it's a few pages, and then you do a treatment. And all the time, there's the back and forth trying to make it as good as possible. But the idea that you'd write an entire novel and then hand it in, I find really terrifying. And also, of course, there are no budgetary constraints. You're allowed to tell a story over many, many weeks. You can kill any number of people. I found it really liberating. It took me, funnily enough, more than one novel to realize that I didn't have to set it in day A, in this one tiny town. I could go anywhere. I could kill anyone. And that is really, really fun. And finally, the thing which is totally liberating and makes the whole thing so worthwhile is you get to access your characters' interior lives. You know, when you write a screenplay, you just don't do that. The actors do that for you brilliantly, but you sort of say, Richard Poole walks into a room, he is grumpy. You know, that's all you're allowed to do, because it's not your job to try and describe his inner thoughts. Then an amazing actor will then do the inner thoughts. So it is wonderful to actually sort of dig in a little bit to the psychology of the characters, which is something that is not afforded to you when you do a screenplay.
Interesting. So I like to see what readers are saying about your books. I don't like to see what they're saying about my books, but I like to see what they're saying about your books. So this is my favorite description, Robert, from a Amazon review of the Marlowe Murder Club. A delightful 77-year-old busybody decides to investigate the death of her neighbor and engages a dog walker and a vicar's wife to help her.
Yeah.
I love it when they distill things down to
She
also mentioned likes to swim naked in the Thames, which gets mentioned a lot in reviews.
Yeah, that's a funny one, because that sort of goes back when we were at Cambridge. There's a bit of the River Cam, where the Dons used to go swimming nude back in the 1920s. And I was always slightly taken. So you'd be punting out of Cambridge towards Grantchester, and there'd be a bit where you would just see old people swimming, and you just knew they were wearing no clothes at all. And so it was slightly baffling. But I love the idea of a liberated woman. So if we talked about Death in Paradise before, that was very much about the preoccupations of an uptight British male, white, private school educated, slightly, I mean, I'm talking about the sort of character. And after many years of that, what I really wanted to do was kind of a love letter to all of the very eccentric, brilliant women who helped raise me. My grandmother, my great aunt Jess, my great aunt Jean, my lovely mother, and her brilliant friends, one of whom was called Judith, who I named the main character after. And the idea of a woman who lives on her own, she's not married, she has a private income, she lives in an arts and crafts mansion, because that's the other thing, you know, I really like arts and crafts mansions, so I've put her in the sort of house I would like to live in. And she swims naked every morning, and she answers to no man. I thought, that's who I want to solve crime.
Well, she's delightful, I will tell you that. So Alicia, you've been very patient. Last but not least, I am generalizing here. Everybody's books setting is very important and place is very important, but I feel like in your book, place plays an enormously large role.
I'm sensing the end of that question was place plays a very important role in your book, and perhaps you could speak a little bit about how you chose to set the book in that location.
Sure, I would love to. And I just want to say congratulations to everyone. I read all of your books and I loved them all. So I'm kind of fangirling, very excited to be here. I dig place. I'm really turned on by setting and the character of a town and geography. I always have been. And so when I'm constructing a book, the first thing I have to know is, where is this going to take place? So I think about setting first, and then I get to know the people who live in that place. And then those people start to do things. So for me, it's setting first, then character, then plot. And I'm not from the Outer Banks originally. I'm from Massachusetts, but I've lived here for 9 years. And there's an expression that I hear from time to time down here that the old timers say about themselves. And I think it just captures so much. They say, the nuts roll to the edge. And so the edge, of course, refers to the unique geography of the Outer Banks. It's a skinny strip of barrier islands off the coast of North Carolina. And it is the edge. It's surrounded by ocean on one side and estuaries on the other. And the nuts who live here, the nuts are the people, and they tend to have an independent streak, but it's one that is coupled with a real valuing of community and togetherness, because when you live on a sandbar, you have to stick together in order to survive. So I would say that the characters, a lot of characters in Smile Beach Murder, have been steeped in this nuts roll to the edge mentality, where they are very protective of their individuality and their independence, but they also celebrate community. So that's the stance that I've observed since I moved down here. And that's sort of the stance that I wanted to explore with lots of affection when I wrote Smile Beach Murder.
I know people from that area, so that's not an expression I've heard, but I'm glad to hear it. And thank you for talking about the role that place played. I feel like Michael is back with us. I'm going to pause for a second and see if that's the case.
I think I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that, because I think a lot of people watching this are really interested in how we write and how we come up with things. I get a sense that you all 5 of you approach things very differently, and I want to talk about that. So I want to move back to Mr. Kraft first. your book has the distinction of being the only book that has a gay character as the central figure. And you and I both know, because we've been around a long time, that when we first started out, it was very hard to get books with gay characters published, unless they were by small presses. And now we see quite a few of them, but not so much in cozies. And I'm wondering, what challenges, if any, did you face in incorporating a gay character and also the setting, which is very gay, into a cozy that's going to appeal to a broader audience? Did you think about that at all, or worry about that at all?
Well, excuse me. I think all gay writers naturally, wonder what their ultimate market is. What readership are you writing to? And yes, in our earlier days, Michael, it was true. I mean, you really couldn't. It was virtually impossible to get a mainstream novel published whose central character was gay. I mean, I'm sure there were exceptions, but it was definitely an uphill battle. So when I finally got that first 3-book contract for the Mark Manning series, I just decided I didn't care. I was going to write the story that I needed to write, and it will find its own marketplace. Those books, those early books, were, when they had bookstores, were always shelved under gay interest. Fortunately, just because of the way things have moved in society in general, and the way, gay rights has become a much more mainstream topic, in TV shows like Will and Grace and all that, people have become, the mainstream audience has become much more comfortable and accustomed to this. And now that niche for gay writers has somewhat disappeared. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because gay writers have always had that niche audience, but I think most gay writers have always aspired to appealing to a widespread general audience as well. So I just didn't worry about it too much with Dante and Jazz. Dante is a gay white man, Jazz is a black straight woman, and I just thought, let's let this chemistry work itself out, and it did. They start out as very hostile toward each other, and in the course of the story, learn a measure of respect and even affection for each other. I think it's a very solid basis for a continuing series. So, did I answer your question sufficiently?
You did. It was interesting. I was curious when we began reading for this award. We had several gay-themed books, and I was curious how they would be received. And as I said, we did not discuss anything before voting. And I will say that all of the jurors were very enthusiastic about these characters. And I was, when you've been doing this as long as we have, for 30-something years, and you've seen various reactions from the reading public to our books, it's interesting to see them suddenly embraced by a mainstream audience. And I don't think there's much more mainstream than the cozy audience. And so that's a good thing. That's not any way a bad thing. And so it's really interesting to see all kinds of characters now being written about and read.
If I could add one detail to this discussion, when I started out with the Mark Manning books and got to that third book, which was when I made the turn and made it a first person narration, and basically wrote what I came to realize was essentially a cozy. I didn't know the rules about cozies, that there's supposed to be, very little foul language, certainly no sex, and so on and so forth. And people started pointing out to me how what I was doing was a little bit different from a traditional cozy, and within certain circles, my books began to be referred to as erotic gay cozies. There was a very strong erotic element to those books. Dante and Jazz the series and this particular book, Desert Getaway, I mean, certainly has erotic moments, but it's all of the fade to black variety, whereas the earlier books didn't leave you hanging. So that is, I think, a conscious decision I made in this book was to, tone that aspect of it down a little bit, so that it would stand a greater chance in the marketplace. So yeah, we do what we have to do.
Connie, I want to move on to you. Can everybody hear me? I think I froze again for a while. Oh, good.
Yes.
Connie, your books, I feel like there's a lot of research involved in your books. And I'm wondering where you begin when you're writing a new story. Is there like a spark of an idea? Is there a character? Is there a murder? What tends to start you off when you're writing a new book?
That's a good question, because I'm not sure that it's always the very same thing. I have a lot of history in my books because I love history, and also because I believe that history doesn't just go away. We are kind of sitting on the top layer of history, and much of what we do and how we think and how we behave has roots in the past. And so I always think of that. I think of history. I always think of objects, precious objects from the past. I think you said in my bio that I grew up in the antiques trade. My parents were high-end antiques dealers, but they were really pretty eccentric. They were very disorganized. They loved to buy. They weren't all that interested in selling. They opened a shop really primarily so they could kind of get rid of some things so they could bring more stuff in. And our house was a little bit like a crowded, disorganized museum. And I only learned later as an adult that my friends thought it was very creepy, but I just thought it was perfectly normal to have, a huge life-size bust of Marie Antoinette sitting in our living room. I didn't think that was weird. But I love the past. I think of objects, but I also think about characters. I love unusual, eccentric characters, and I love to populate my book with characters that there's humor in it, but it's not the humor that comes from making jokes. It's the humor that just comes out of the eccentricities of people's lives and the way they see life. And so I think those are the things that I start with. I always have a general idea of where I think the plot is going to go. Like, if you're traveling from Boston to California, you might think you're going to stop in Chicago and then Kansas City and, Colorado. But I don't know how I'm going to get from point A to point B. So that leaves me some freedom. So plot in the macro sense is a part of it too, but the micro plot comes as I go.
That's interesting. That brings me to two questions. The first is for Tamara. Your book is hysterical in many, many ways. There's so much about it that's so funny. But what drives it is the relationship between Tess and her daughter.
Yeah. So when I started writing it, my kiddo was the same age as Gertrude, and I'm pretty much the same age as Tess, and Tess is a thriller writer. So I'm not saying it's autobiographical, but there are definitely autobiographical connections there. And so the relationship between Tess and Gertrude is very similar to my own relationship with my now 17-year-old.
Is that what prompted the book? Like, where did you start with the book? Did you think, I want to write about a mother and daughter, or did you?
Yeah. I thought we had a really fun dynamic. I thought that it would make a fun dynamic for a murder mystery. What's really funny is that the main character and the daughter are very similar to me and my kid. The husband in the book is kind of a cad, and he's a jerk. My husband in real life is very lovely. I promise. That hurt his feelings a little bit.
Where does humor come naturally to you? Because it certainly feels that way in the book.
It comes naturally out of my fingers. I don't know that it always comes out of my mouth. I watch a lot of comedies. I enjoy comedians. So a lot of the pop culture that I absorb tends towards the comedy. So I think it just kind of, it's a bit absorbed and then it comes back out.
That's interesting. And Robert, that leads me to you. You can see a lot of, I mean, character is obviously very important in script writing. How do you approach it differently in a novel where you can't visually see the character? If you
Gosh,
don't, like, you're not seeing them on a screen. It's...
Funny enough, I'm going to give a terrible answer. It's exactly the same. So what's horrifying about writing a screenplay is that you have all of the interior life and you know, or you think you know what they're feeling and thinking in every moment. You're just not allowed to write it. So that's why when I said it was so liberating to write the actual sort of, to do adverbs and adjectives, screenplays are very nouny, mostly nouns. So to actually be able to start describing what was already in your head, that's sort of the joy, but they are kind of both the same, funnily enough.
When you were writing it, do you see it in your head as a screenplay? Like, I know some writers can't visualize things. Do you see it as you're writing it? Do you see it playing out as a script?
Yes, I do. And I think, if I'm honest, that isn't always the best way to think of it. I imagine I'm watching it, or I'm in the room, or I'm one of the characters. So we've got these three characters, Judith, Bex, and Susie. They don't know each other at the beginning of the story. And because it's set in England, essentially it goes Judith, upper class, very sort of posh and wealthy and lives in this big mansion. And then you've got Bex, who's middle class, who's a lot like sort of the world that I live in. Then you've got Susie, who's sort of much rougher and is a single mum and has worked hard all of her life. So you've already got that dynamic going where they've got different approaches. And funnily enough, you realize very quickly that actually the slightly upper class one and the working class one get on much more naturally because they just speak their mind, because there are no consequences to what they say, because one of them's got sort of enough money and status that they don't care, and one's got no money or status, so they don't care. And so you've got in particular poor old Bex in the middle, who's the vicar's wife trying to do the right thing. She's the one having to navigate these two essentially loose cannons. And so when I'm writing a scene, I just try and imagine me being in that scene, and they just talk. Like coming out of your fingers, like Tamara says. I don't know where it comes from, but it's true, I suppose, for all of us here today. They just start talking to each other, and it's good when they surprise you. That's the most exciting moment, when someone starts to say something that you weren't expecting them to say, and might even reveal a bit of plot or a way of solving a crime that you didn't even know was there. Because weirdly, they sort of do operate independently, solving the crime, and sometimes they talk to you. I'd be sectioned by the end of this, I can see.
Well, this is a good question, because I was about to ask Alicia, your book is fairly complicated plot-wise. And I'm curious, do you plot out before you're writing, or do things come to you as you're writing?
I would say both. Primarily, I am a plotter. I used to be a pantser, and then I switched teams because I realized when I decided I wanted to write a mystery, I realized I need to have some scaffolding up so that because you kind of have to reverse engineer a mystery. At least that's the only way I could find my way through. So I'm a plotter, but I also would say that whatever works for you is what you should do. I think there's a spectrum, and wherever you fall on that spectrum, maybe it's a combination, that's where you should be. So whatever gets the words coming out of your fingers is how you should approach it. And I do find paradoxically that when I have a plan in place, there tend to be more moments of surprise and spontaneity and eureka moments as I'm writing than when I have no plan. I just think there's too much chaos, and I'm trying to strangle it onto the page, and it doesn't want to work. So ironically, having a plan allows me to feel a little freer and be more surprised by my characters as I go along.
That's interesting. So I agree with you. I think I never used to outline, but then I started outlining and then just never used it. But somehow seeing the outline made me believe that this could be a book.
Yes.
Even if the final book was not at all what was in the outline. Sometimes that helped. So that brings me to, we only have about 10 minutes, so I have some rapid questions for all of you. And we'll go around answering them. First one is, do you always know who the murderer is when you've started the book? Michael?
Yes, I do. Would you like me to expound on that?
Yeah, a little bit, briefly.
Because I'm also a plotter, and I always do a thorough outline. Yes, by the time I start writing it, I know who done it.
Connie?
Yes, I do mostly, although I have to say that the book I'm writing right now, I have been debating.
Tamara?
No, never. I not only don't know who's going to be the murderer, I often don't know who the victim is going to be until I'm actually in there.
Interesting.
I am
Robert?
making it up as I go.
Yeah, no, I'm very much a plotter because for me, I'm trying to do sort of golden age stuff. It's a parlor game. So you start with the killer. I mean, you said at the beginning that I started doing magic in Hamleys, and it is sort of a magic trick. You're trying to smuggle. You're saying, here are 4 cards. Choose one of them, and then you try and reveal that it was a 5th card all along, or that you'd ruled out one of the cards that it could be. So I plot, and again, a bit like Lisa was saying, because of that, surprises happen. Because I think in my case, it frees me, because when I start a scene, I kind of know what the beats have to be, and then you surprise yourself rather than going, I don't know what's going to happen in this scene or who's going to speak next.
Alicia, do you know who's done it?
I think I know, and then I get to the end of Act 1 and I realize I was totally wrong, and then I figure out who the actual villain is.
We have some questions from the audience. How would you define a cozy mystery for yourself? And we'll start with Michael.
Well, I think the most important aspect of a cozy is that there's an amateur sleuth involved. Generally, lawmen are prohibited from the central role in a cozy, but it's also a matter of tone. It's no accident that so many cozies take place in small towns. I'm not sure what else I would say about it. And I think it's important that amateur sleuth, it has a point of reckoning and a decision to follow his or her heart to help solve the crime and to seek justice. I mean, that's the overriding plot. I think the principal plot point, the principal conflict of any murder mystery is finding justice and righting wrongs. And it's especially, I think, clearly focused in a cozy where a person who would not normally deal with these things decides to deal with them.
I will interject here for a moment to say that the Braun Foundation did establish this.
Oh.
Well, we're going to return to what I know what Michael is about to say. So, and if not, I will add what he was about to say. But maybe we could go through, if others have a response to that, how you would define a cozy for yourself, how you think of it.
Well, I think Michael answered it. Oh, sorry, I was jumping into a pause. I will add one point, which is that it's a safe space. So you know that whilst people are going to be killed, I mean, it's hilarious that we talk about murders in a safe space environment, but it tends to be slightly removed. So poison, hugely popular, as we know from Agatha Christie, who was a chemist herself, and there'll be a stabbing or there'll be a shooting, but we're not going to do anything too nasty. You're not going to go into the sort of the psychological depth and the horror, the true horror of what murder is. So you can read it more at a surface level. That's what I would say, my one point.
For me, I feel like a cozy it's characters that you want to come back to time and time again. So it's like a beloved sitcom. Like it's never gonna, blow your mind in terms of breaking all the rules, but you're going to see the people that you love and to revisit them. And that's how long-term cozy series work for me, I think.
I agree with all of, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
Okay, related to what Tamara said, I would add that cozies, and hopefully this is not a spoiler for anyone, they tend to have happy for now endings. So, happily ever after endings are really nice, but they don't really have any teeth, they don't really have any sense of continuity. But with cozies and their happy for now endings, that the characters are going to be okay, at least until the next dead body shows up, at which point more shenanigans will ensue. So.
And I was just going to add that I think there's a spectrum. I don't think it's a narrow category. I actually have always thought of my books as more traditional mysteries, kind of in the golden age tradition. But I'm happy to own the title cozy as well. So sometimes I think there's a difference between American cozies and British cozies. So that's all I can add, I guess, to that.
Well, Alicia and Tamara, actually, your answers, and Connie, I wondered about that too, between American and British. But Alicia and Tamara, your answer made me think about another question that we had from the audience about how do you know when a series is complete? Like, do you go into a series having a sense, which I guess is the plotting question as well. Do you go in feeling like there's going to be 3 books and I know what those look like, or this is going to be 95 books and I know what that's going to look like? What has that looked like for you as you've started series? And Connie, as you're in the 4th of the Kate Hamilton, like as you're moving through a series, do you have a sense of what the whole is? Or are you also, Alicia, as you're saying, like, it's okay for now until the next dead body drops, like the door is always open. So how do you have a sense when the series is complete?
I think it's really hard. I would say it's really hard because publishing doesn't always tell you how many books you're going to get. Like you're going to start with 3 and then it might be 6, it might be 9, it might be 12. So you always have to have that open door. You have to be able to finish it right now or keep it going for 12 more books and you don't know.
Yeah, what she said. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Any other thoughts on that or how it's felt for you? I mean, that's the publishing part of it is certainly drives a lot of things. So but yeah, any other thoughts on what it means to kind of conceptualize or think about how you move through a series?
For me, I sense that the end of a series is coming when I've taken that central character through like an overarching series of subplots that usually have to do with that character's personal development, maybe romantic aspects of his or her life, and that central character has somehow changed, in an arc that flows through the series, and I like to try to achieve a graceful landing at the end, and then at that point, I'm ready to let go of it as a writer.
That's excellent. I will share that Michael's Wi-Fi seems to have been eaten by squirrels, which I guess feels like a plot line for a possible cozy in and of itself, although the squirrels seem to be very clearly the culprits. So I think we'll end with like just a general question about what other writers or TV shows or movies are you watching these days, and how might that inform your own writing? Do you like to be reading things that are kind of in conversation with your books, or do you prefer to kind of go much further afield?
I never know quite how to answer that, and I'm always afraid I'm going to be leaving people out. So I'd just like to say that lately I've been reading the very fine work of everyone else on this panel today, and have enjoyed it very much, and cannot help but be influenced by it. And it's just been a pleasure to share this time with you.
Well, perhaps that's a perfect place to leave it. I want to remind everyone that you can join us tomorrow, Sunday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern for a conversation with the nominees for Best Juvenile. I put the link to join that webinar in the chat, and that you can learn more about the Edgar Awards by following us on social media using the hashtag Edgars 2023, or by visiting the websites mysterywriters.org and the edgarawards.com, where you can again find out about all of these authors and their books. And hopefully you've taken the links that I posted in the chat and we'll get them all if you don't have them already. We'll look forward to more in the series, or to starting a series where you can move through them. And I think what Michael was going to say at a certain point was that Mystery Writers of America created this particular award to actually honor cozies in Lilian Jackson Braun's name. So it's a thrill to have this award be part of the Edgars, and so wonderful to have had all of you in conversation today. Thank you to the audience for being here. And a reminder that the awards will be live streamed this coming Thursday on the 27th. And we'll look forward to celebrating all of these books continuously, and hope that you all pick them up. Thank you again for being here. And thank you all so much for your conversation and for your work and your words in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie, thank you, Michael.